Hello YouTube. At the risk of being buried in with the parasites, this is a video response to Thunderf00t's recent video, Your Mother's a Whore and Other Stuff. As I watched your video, I found it interesting that your central question seemed to be, why is it atheists who come to the defense of Islam? In your previous works, in fact the series that caught my attention to you, you were laughing at young earth creationists, a politically active minority with almost laughable worldviews and unbelievably silly science. In other words, a very easy target, and one who is not going to find a lot of defenders because they are so ridiculously out of mainstream. Since then, you've had videos poking fun at some of the sillier bits of the Bible, highlighting the institutional unethicalness of the Catholic Church concealing priests who do naughty things to young boys, and just naughty things in general, and lately, an appeal against the entirety of Islam. And yet you profess not to understand why your group of detractors is growing and beginning to include more and more of other people we would have identified as rational. Do you see the progression in these videos of how each time you broaden your scope of who's under the gun, and each time you include more and more people who aren't truly deserving of this type of attack? The numbers of Christians who've never bothered to read the Bible makes attacking the Bible relatively silly. There are very few Bible literalists in terms of the entire Christian population. Likewise, the abuses of the Catholic Church are perpetrated by the recognized hierarchy of the Catholic Church. This certainly makes the Catholic Church a worthy lampoon target of their naughty behavior. However, in attacking all of Islam, you are lumping every single moderate who's done nothing more than think they have found a path to God, and perhaps pray a few more times a day than we think is rational, in with all of the extremists blowing up, among other people, lots of the aforementioned moderates. It is this treatment of religion as if it were some sort of mind virus, and an attack against moderates, lumping them together with the extremists, that I think most of us, myself for certain, find so unbelievably objectionable. It's not a rational stance. It's not a productive stance. It is divisive, and it lumps people who may be on the fence into the extremist camps out of nothing but self-defense. In effect, by incorporating the language and actions of extremism, if not violent extremism, you are courting many of the same responses that the extremists get, which is significant disapproval. So now there have been pictures of Muhammad drawn, and electronic copies of the Quran destroyed. And what have we accomplished with this? Do you think we've even caught the attention of the extremists? I doubt they're watching. I think we have inflamed the moderates, but not in a manner which either of us would find useful. So I think we should agree that life is measured in deeds. You have built, nearly single-handedly, a phenomenal channel, one which I thought seriously about before I unsubscribed. How about using that popularity for some deeds which are, if still divisive, at least pointed in the correct direction? In 1637, a book appeared in Paris, Rome, Amsterdam, and London. It was written in French as opposed to Latin, so as to be more accessible to laypersons, at least as long as they spoke French. This book arguably began the revolution of rationalism. It is now called Discourse on Method, and it was written by René Descartes. It's uncopywritten and uncopyrightable. It's also written in language that religious persons can understand. René Descartes even published his own ontological argument, underlying his certainty in God for the reason for his rationalism. The book has an excellent track record for moving agrarian societies into an industrial revolution and for undermining unthinking dogmatic religious regimes based on state churches and monarchies. Instead of calling for charitable donations to help you pay for your time in YouTube, let's actually show you're more committed to the deeds you leave behind than the financial wealth you gain through YouTube. I'll offer to help. We'll build a charity. This charity will be designed to translate initially this work, and if it goes well other works, from English or French or Latin into Arabic. It will then produce low-cost copies of this work and distribute them in Islamic countries. The previous circulation was done anonymously, and I recommend an anonymous distribution at this time as well. That way neither of us has to fear from any of the extremists it's going to anger to have their populations become interested in rational thinking. If it's successful, we can draw more endorsements from others who are interested in a more rational Middle East. We can translate other works. which will have an even greater effect over time. We can offer generations of children with no access to written material beyond the Quran a chance to expand their minds with something more. And we can deal a blow far more deadly to the extremists and the manipulators of that region than any amount of Quran burning or hate-filled verses. As an added bonus, in directing a non-profit charity group, you can draw a salary. And if it really takes off, that salary could become substantial. There's no need for this second renaissance to take hundreds of years. The material that took so long to come up with the first time around is already available. All we need to do is publish it for inquiring minds who are waiting, begging for someone to give them something they can read that will elevate them from the human squalor that is currently prevalent in the Middle East. I think that's a deed worth being remembered. Apostate, apostle. It's kind of like a palindrome.